Hello everyone, we are here with Ruby Powers, board certified immigration and nationality attorney. We are going to present to you what is the F-1 visa. Hi Ruby.
Hi, how are you doing? Good to see you.
So we are here also with Powers Law Group. This is a law firm that's been working almost 13 years old already. So thank you so much.
Yeah, so we're a full service law firm, and today we wanted to talk about the F-1 visa. This is a non immigrant visa for students. It is a great opportunity to come to the United States. It provides a lot of opportunities to later get work authorization and a pathway to maybe an employment visa or maybe other options, including national interest waiver. So we're going to talk about the eligibility, application process, and the consular appointments waiver for in-person interviews. So it's a non-immigrant visa, allows a student to temporarily live in the U.S. for a defined period of time. We usually use the term DS, otherwise known as duration of status, because sometimes people don't know how long it'll take to get the degree or the program. Now, this can be used, as we see here on the screen, for lots of different programs. It could be for high school. There's exchange programs, and basically they can be also used for private elementary school, seminary, conservatory, other academic institutions, including like language programs. But normally people think of it in the terms of a university or college opportunity. Now, we'll walk through what it takes to obtain this, but an F-1 it's generally as good as long as you maintain your status with the school or the program, that you pay your tuition, you attend, you meet the requirements needed. And there is this program called SEVIS, SEVIS, that was created after 9/11, 2001 era that allows the international student officers um, to be able to maintain whether a person's in status or not. If a person fails to pay, attend, go to the requisite amount of courses, classes, um, then they could be taken out of the system and they have further problems. There are opportunities of to be able to have a lapse depending on what type of program it is, in case there's like a medical or some other concern. So there are some flexibility, but you definitely need to talk with your international student officer. Now, the requirements are you have to be apply and be accepted to a course of study at a SEVP approved school, CVIP. Now, in the US. So what that means is you have to apply to that program. Now, one of the good things to ask is, do you issue I-20s? That's what you need for them to give you once you're accepted and show enough requisite proof to be accepted and that meet the requirements for them to be able to issue an I-20. Now, like we said, it could be high schools, seminaries, private elementary schools, language programs. Now, then you need to be once you get accepted, they'll issue an I-20, and then we can do something. Either we can do a change of status here in the country to change from one visa to the next, or we can do consular processing, most likely in your home country at the U.S. Embassy or consulate. Now, you generally have to be enrolled full time and proficient in English, or it's leading to English proficiency. There are language programs. And this is also important, prove sufficient financial funds to support study, because for the most part, there's not work authorization opportunity while you're in this program. And so you need to be able to demonstrate that somebody will be able to financially support you so that you will not, to sort of verify that you will stay in that role, that you in that position, you won't need to work illegally, or it's like more likely than not that you'll be able to stay in that course of study. Another thing to note when you do international study as an international student, is that generally the program is the cost is a little bit it's a different rate than an in-state student versus a out-of-state versus an international student. So depending on the place of study, the cost can be more on the higher ends of those different realms. So you have to consider that as well. Now, you also need to make sure you have ties to your home country. So this is a non-immigrant visa, so you need to make sure it's obvious that you're going to return back home and it's only temporary. Now, there are some people who've been in school a really long time. They come get a associate and a bachelor's and a master's and a PhD. I've seen it, but in theory, the idea is you're going to return, and you could be outside of the U.S. when you apply for the consular processing, but you also could apply from inside the country as well through a change of status. So for example, we have some clients who are here on a B1 or B2, or maybe they were an E2 dependent and they need to change to an F1. The thing is, though, when you look online for the change of status on USCIS website, is it's taking about a year and a half, and you're not allowed to study until the F1 is approved if you're doing the change of status. So that's why a lot of people would prefer to just deal with the consulate. So here's the process for the consulate. So going back, we find a program, you apply, you get it accepted, you show the financial requirements on the I-134, and then they'll provide you the documents you need. Then you can, so let's talk, we already talked about the change of status, but let's talk about the consular appointment. So then you would submit the DS-160, that's a pretty common form to do a non-immigrant visa appointment, and then you would go to the interview. Now you need to make sure, let's go back one second, that interview is going to be within the 30 days of the start date of your program. So sometimes you want to get a lot of stuff done really early, but you can't. And then what happens is most of these programs start in like January, like June, May, the summer, and then again in the August. So just imagine there's a lot of activity at those posts at that time. So you want to be really thinking ahead and making sure you don't come too early and you don't come too late, because it really can mess everything up. So at that point, you want to make sure when you're doing the DS-160 and you're planning this out, you have enough 6 months or more on your passport so that when you file, when you go to the appointment, you have more than 6 months of time on your passport. In fact, just a good rule of thumb, just have as much validity you can on that passport, because if you get your visa in one passport and you have to extend it and you go this and there, and maybe your country doesn't have a place you can renew it inside the country, and it just gets really confusing and messy. So at the appointment, you will demonstrate the documents that you have, update your financial situation, the support that you will have. It's good to have a color photo. It really can depend on the post that you're applying. So another good rule of thumb is to double check what they request at that location, because it can vary from post to post. And then you want to just bring a lot of stuff. That way, maybe they don't ask for it, maybe they don't want to look at it, but at least you have it. That's the Murphy's Law. If you don't bring it, they're going to ask. And if you do bring it, they won't ask. So bring the stuff and be prepared. So the financial, the school, and from I-20, the valid passport, and evidence that you about your program and studies. Now, there was something that came out earlier that they were trying to speed up consular appointments and sort of conserve resources. And basically they said they were waiving, consulate appointments were being waived for in-person interviews for FMs and Js until the end of 2022 for those who'd already been approved before, and basically they were pretty much clean-cut cases that they didn't have any concerns. So it was going to be on a case-by-case basis if you still needed to do them. But you do want to plan in advance and know whether or not you meet that requirement. Now, other things to consider when we're talking about the F1 is a few things. One of them is that you can have the after a program, after each level, so let's say associates, bachelor's, master's, you're allowed to get an optional practical training, which basically is a work authorization for a year. You can get an extension on that OPT if you are in the science, technology, engineering, and math field. Sometime in the last 2 years, Biden expanded what was considered a degree under a STEM. So that's something to look at, gave a lot more opportunity for individuals. So generally what happens is a person comes on the F1, then they graduate, then they get the OPT. Ideally, they can extend it if they are eligible under STEM. And then maybe an employer is like, I really like this person, I want to sponsor them for an H. or maybe for legal permanent residency. But maybe if not, depending on what their goals are, they go off and get their bachelor's or their master's. So in general, after each level, you're eligible for an OPT. I have seen a confusion or debate between whether a master's and a JD were on the same level or not. So definitely don't assume that they're two different levels. Make sure you've looked into that if that were to be your situation. Um, but for the most part, you see it associates, bachelor's, master's, PhD, an OPT for each situation if a person was to do all of those things. Um, so,
Ruby, before
yeah.
we continue, we have a question. It says, it comes from Vivek. Hi, Ruby. First of all, thank you for very much for such ample amount of knowledge you're sharing. I just want to know if my student visa will get expired in next 3 months and my studies are over. And at the
Mhm.
same time, I get a job in USA. So will my student visa will get converted into working visa?
Well, I mean, we needed to discuss that about whether or not you've already applied for your OPT, and whether or you've already changed your status to something else, like an H or something else. It does not automatically convert. So when people are about to finish up a program, then they look to applying for the OPT in advance, like usually a few months in advance, so that way they could have it by the time they graduate. The other thing I didn't mention is on the OPT, you need to be working in the field that you're studied. And if for any reason you can't find a job, you also could be volunteering, but it has to be in the field that you study. If you don't work or volunteer and document that, then you could be out of status on your OPT if you don't maintain that. So I don't think I have enough information to answer that question from Vivek, but you can always call us and have a consult and we can discuss further. But just, there, don't assume, and also make sure that you do everything in advance. Like I'll just say in like closing, this is usually a nice pathway to something else, like an OPTs, H's, perms, something else. Even my husband was an F-1 at some point in his life, and we met at university. So you never know where that path will lead to. But you do want to have a few long game visions, like where will this go? I do an F and an OPT and an LH. Or do I find a company to do a perm? Or do I, or my plan to go back home and, grow my career and then maybe come back as an investor or whatever it may be. So generally what we do is we think about a few steps ahead about possibilities and then check in with people throughout their career as to which one is the best option for them. So that's pretty much F1s really quickly. I used to work at the University of Texas in Austin International Student Office when I was going to UT. And so that really gave me affinity towards L's, M's, J's, not L's, but J's, M's, and F's. And so anyway, I learned a lot. And that was also before the CBIS program, 9/11. That was the same year actually. But so I really identify with a lot of the students, and that this is a really great program to come to the United States and have more opportunity. So how can people stay in touch with us, and what are we doing next, Ileana?
So here we have all the social media. You can reach us through via them, and also you have the number. You can reach out to all the legal team so they can help you out with all the concerns you have with immigration or visas or anything. And then in the next slide, we have next month's presentations, also October presentation, sorry. Today we did what is the F-1 visa, the student visa. We have the O-1 visa, victims of criminal activity applying for U visa, and we have I-601 unlawful presence waiver for this month.
Yeah, so we have a lot of variety from humanitarian to waivers to employment, and so this is going to be a lot of great opportunities to cover material. And we also do them in Spanish. What we do on Wednesdays, we do in Spanish on Fridays, and this all goes on our YouTube page, so you can check to see it and share it with your friends. So Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.